Let's get started. So welcome everybody to the second forum of Yuva, our youth. We have with us today the renowned psychologist, Dr. Harmesh Kumar, and it's so nice and kind of him to invite a few more guests for us. So without much ado, I have given all the information about him in my email letter, in my message. So we'll get started. And Dr. Harmesh Kumar ji, this floor is all yours. Will you please help us introduce your guest for us also, please?
Sure. I think this technology, we're still learning how to.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So I am Dr. Harmesh Kumar, and I have my colleague Brenu. She's a school psychologist, and her son Sahaj. He's a
high school junior.
High school junior. So I thought, because we're talking about the Yuva and somebody from that group would be nice to have with us.
Perfect. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful.
So as you said, you have sent the information about me to most of your group members. A little bit about me, I'll share that I'm clinical neuropsychologist. I came with my doctorate degree from India, from PGH Chandigarh. I worked for World Health Organization in 1983 in India and Chandigarh. Then in 90s, I came to San Francisco area because मैं ससुराल के घर आ गया 90 में. And then from there, I did my postdoctoral training from UCSF with Dr. Aaron Roof. He's a clinical neuropsychologist, world-renowned. My work was on head injury, brain pathologies, and his work was on head injury, TBI, traumatic brain injuries. And then in 93, when I finished my postdoctoral training, I started there was no mental health services for people who cannot afford to get the mental health services. They were very expensive. So I started my first nonprofit mental health agency in 93 with the name of Neurobehavioral and Psychological Institute. And later it changed the name to the Hume Center. And that I ran until 2004 when Bush went to Iraq. He cut a lot of social program and a lot of funding. So the choice I had whether to fire 13 budding psychologists or fire myself after 13 years. So after a lot of emotional grueling, I decided to leave because I have a little bit more skills. I could utilize those skills outside the nonprofit. So I from 2004 onwards, I have been into private practice. I ran my own assisted living facilities into private practice. And as you know, I'm also into giving back to the community. And I served as a 10-year commissioner with the city of Concord at the larger to help the community at large. And now I'm running for Concord City Council. But my major focus is still clinical mental health services. I work with the Stockton prison where we have around 3,000 inmates, and out of 3,000, more than 2,600 are chronically mentally disabled or with dementia. So that's the population right now I'm serving in Stockton. I work only 3 days a week there, and 4 days I'm doing my own thing. So when Archana ji, when you told me about this issue about teenage and the mental health issues in the teenagers, especially youth, those who come from other parts of the world, and sometimes they get caught in between living in two worlds, and sometimes people get confused whether I should follow Indian parental rule or should I follow American school system rule. So it becomes quite a confusing, and on top of that, all these software and internet and all the social media thing, and because everybody has when we were growing up in India, Achani आपको पता होगा जब हम grow कर रहे थे, people used to say कि इंडिया में 33 करोड़ देवता हैं. So 33 crore devta means that there were only 33 crore people at that time in India. And 33 crore में meaning पे हर एक अपना खुद देवता है.
So true.
So now with the internet advent, we have billions and billions of devtas. They are trying to tell you every day and night on the internet what is good for you. And then you wonder that something you are doing every day is something wrong. And you get this emotional equilibrium unsettled on a daily basis that I'm not doing something right. Because look at the people when they put beautiful pictures on the Facebook, beautiful photos on the Facebook, or beautiful quotes on the internet, then you start wondering, what is happening with you? You don't think that way. You're a little bit, you're not smart enough. You're not intelligent enough. We start questioning ourselves. And that becomes when kids are growing up in that kind of environment. And sometimes, because in teenager life, the sexuality and the identity crisis are already there. And they are trying to figure out what is right for them, what is not right for them. And then all the pornographic material on the internet they go to, and then they want to learn about sexuality from those kind of things, which are not real stuff. They get very kind of distorted idea about sexuality, distorted idea about their own body image, distorted ideas about other people's sexuality based on what they see in the media. But this is not the real stuff. So real stuff, how do we talk about the real stuff? And then kids have so many pressures and parents have so many pressures. All of us, when we come from India, we have to sustain ourselves here in this country because we see all this glamorous picture on the TV through the Hollywood videos or through the individual internet commercials that America is such and such, America is such and such. And they show you such beautiful, tempting, seducing trailers on a daily basis. And those trailers, when we come here, we don't find them true because things are so hard here to sustain yourself, to make a living in this country, to get a job. If you come like me, I came with my doctorate when I needed to have a job to do my postdoctoral training. Everybody I apply for, and they will say, oh, you are overqualified. We can't give you a job. And in my field, you can't get a job because you don't have a degree from American University. So it was very hard thing for us to do at that time. Sometimes I have to work at low wages to keep me going. And then also think about my professional development. You have to go to school, you have to pay tuition fee. So all these things become very testy at times. And if you are having kids or you have your own kids and you have to take care of the kids, it's not like we have in India, you know, where our grandparents, our neighborhood will take care of the kids. And now we don't have that luxury here. Everybody's busy with their own struggle in life. Everybody's trying to make ends meet. And some of us, those who have been successful, then we take on some additional roles and additional journeys. And it makes sometimes very tempting for us to also to how to be consistent with whatever we're doing. And emotional and psychological pressure keep on increasing when we hear issues and problems from your friends, from your extended family, from your colleagues when you're working, and from the neighborhood you're living in. And because everybody has a different cultural context, different language, different food, and we smell different things in the same neighborhood, and it becomes a task who you identify with, who you don't identify with. And that confusion gave rise to the emotional confusion within all of us. And that's where the mental health comes handy. Once you know what is happening with you, once you know what resources you have, and sometimes when we're scattered, when we're distracted with day-to-day struggles, we cannot focus on what is really meaningful to us, because this community, this society we live in, the culture we live in, because we are running at a thousands and thousands of miles per hour, emotionally and socially, to keep ourselves stable. Like Mark Twain, one of the great philosopher and poet from the Western world, he said that you have to be running to be stationary. And when you have to run to be stationary, and sometimes you miss so many beautiful things on the road. You can't smell the flower, you can't see the beauty around you. And the same is true within our family. Sometimes we come home tired from work, we don't even acknowledge our surrounding in the home. We only go to one corner of our house and just do things in that corner and get up in the morning and go to work. So there are so many pressures on us, and I could continue talking about mental health and issue, but I would like to, as I said, understand a little bit from the parent side what pressure they are feeling. And before we go there, I would like to introduce Brenu. She's a school psychologist, and Sahaj, he's a junior in the high school. I want to hear from him what pressure they feel in the school. It will be helpful for all of us to know. So maybe Sahaj, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Saj. I'm a junior in high school. And
I have a request. I have a small request, Dr. Kumar. So we are not able to see all three of you together because of the virtual background, maybe. So if you can turn off the virtual background, we can see all three of you together.
Okay, so that's his department.
I apologize, but I want to make the best of all. I mean, look at you in a wholesome way, because we are missing at least one of you at one time. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, that was my political background was going to have. Okay. So go ahead, Sahaj.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. So everyone, namaskar. Such an honor to be here. So a little bit about my background. I started as a, my training as school psychologist, and I've worked in districts from elementary to high school, all ages. I've been doing that from about 18 to 19 years. And I'm also a licensed marriage family therapist, and I have my private practice over the weekends.
Miss, it's beautiful. I can hear you, but if you can come a little closer, it'll be even more. Yeah, thank you for the benefit of all our audience. Thank you, appreciate it.
Is this better?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So should I start from the beginning or just?
Yes,
okay,
please. Yes, please. Thank you.
So my career, I started as a school psychologist, and I've been working in this field for now about 18 years. And I've worked with all age groups from elementary to high school, and I've learned a lot. And I feel that children are our future. So once you invest in them, there's a potential when we work together, and it takes a village to raise our kids, that we're making them a better, productive citizens. I'm also a licensed marriage family therapist, and I have a private practice, and I do a lot of court-ordered therapy when individuals that are involved, not in legal matters, but divorce or eating disorders or depression or anxiety, ADHD. So I cover that gamut, and I work with individuals and families and couples. I just recently graduated from law school with the hopes to become a special ed attorney and advocate for the rights of the parents and students, and just connect them in the community with resources. I think that starts very early, and it's always nipping things in the bud and catching it, and then giving the right resources and the tools so we learn to cope, and then we become productive citizens. That's our end goal. So this is really a beautiful opportunity because I'm seeing from both angles. I came as an exchange student, and I lived with an Italian family. They were my guardians, and I can really relate to what's happening. So I come from India, where I was in a convent school. I did my senior year in America, and just that when overnight everything changes for you, and you leave a culture, you leave your family, you leave those nuances, and you're trying to get acculturated in a whole different, what works and what doesn't. And it, as Dr. Kumar was talking, I was reflecting upon what helped me keep on track and not get astray, and what was that recipe, and how I could, from my own experience, be able to share that with our kids who come from different countries and what kind of challenges. So it's the first-hand knowledge. And I think what it really boils down to, the basic foundation. When in life, when we derail, no matter how beautiful the building we may make, 5 stories, 10 stories, if the foundation is not strong, it may last 1 year, it may last 5 years, but eventually it falls. And what I'm seeing as a school psychologist, where there's a big, huge a jump in referrals for attentional issues, depression, anxiety, learning disabilities, I just sit back and think, gosh, that's a lot to handle. And we give, even though I like that everybody has a voice and everybody, I respect the individual side of everyone, but there's time and place. When we give too much too soon to our children, and there's no magic number to the age 18, and we say you're independent, you're on your own, we haven't taught that child how to balance a, or keep a bank account, balance a paycheck, what paycheck even looks like, and what's the deductions are, and how you save, how you balance, what the bills would look like. We don't give that practical training. Everybody at school, I feel, either we are on a diploma track or A through G track, but the realities of what really practical skills are missing. So we have a education system that needs to incorporate those pieces. Then we have a lot of broken families. Then we have a lot of families, parents working 2 jobs. So when I compare that, yes, we have all the nice things. And yes, in America, it's the country we makes dreams come true. But there is a glue and foundation that also goes with that. And somehow we miss that. And so we're building on big gaps, and eventually it will collapse, and it is. So I'm very overwhelmed in my as I work as a school psychologist, with the amount of referrals and the anxiety and depression at such a young age. And it makes you wonder what's going on, what happened. And comparing that to our Indian ways, the joint families, where we had patience and compassion, where we talked about this, when your families, joint families, we talk about issues. That was like a natural built-in therapy. You teach values, you teach compassion. Now parents are working, TVs or kids are being taken care of, nannies or babysitters. We are in our room. Technology is our best friend. We're becoming isolated. We don't even know. We live under the same roof, but we don't know each other. And so it's becoming isolating. And then kids, they need direction. And yes, they go through certain growth periods, and where their hormones are different, and they are asserting independence, and they want to test you here. And that's when parenting skills come in. So there are different ways of how you want to parent. You want to be permissive parent, authoritarian parent. You want to be, just a balanced approach. But those skills also were not taught. So I think we start these basic things where it should be a balanced approach. In the end, we want our kids to graduate and become very successful individuals that give back to society, that are able to live with respect and dignity and provide for themselves and their basic needs. We want to make sure that they're really comfortable in their own skin, the sense of who I am. I'm unique, I'm lovely, and I love my flaws, because that's what adds this beauty about me. Perfection is boring. And I wish that more programs on TV would be educational, more about ads, about resources. A few years ago, I traveled to Australia, and I was just very, very impressed that on the freeway, when you're driving, they would say click it or ticket, or some messages which were constantly, you're taking that in, and it stays with you. I think by the time my trip ended, I knew all the 800 numbers or resources of that country that I could tap into. And so we need to do that, as opposed to, ads about things that don't really matter. So we need to put those resources, we need to reach out to the families, we need to come with a place of compassion and with the approach that it takes a village to raise our children, and we all step in and take responsibility. So this is a great segue where here is different generations, and this is a high school kid who can sort of, I guess, speak to what he's seeing and from his lens. And Sahaj, the floor is yours.
Yes, so I'm in high school, I'm a junior. I've seen the majority of our education system so far. And for me, I think we're starting to value grades over learning. I see kids going, well, grades, but at the same time, you ask them maybe a month after their big chapter test, and you say, well, do you remember what happened in the last chapter? And they go, I don't know. And we're putting so much pressure on just grades alone, and we're not helping nurture that learning and that growth that the education system was really built for and meant for. And it can get very stressful. We're on this kind of 4 to 5.0 grading scale, A through F, and we're starting to value, oh, you didn't get an A, well, you should try harder then. But it's not all about that. It's not all about the A's. It's not all about that 4.0 or 5.0 GPA. It's about what you've learned, and it's about how you maintain or retain that information over time and how you can use it and apply it to other areas. So I think really when you look at the big picture, it's starting to drift from the original goal that everybody kind of had in mind. And it puts a lot of stress on kids, especially, many parents, they like to put pressure and say, well, you need to get an A in this subject, or you need to try harder in this subject, when in reality, it's not the child's fault. It could be the teacher's fault. Sometimes teachers don't teach well, or it could be just the school's fault in general. Maybe the school doesn't have that environment that can help somebody grow and nurture their brain as they're developing. And being someone who's going through one of the biggest steps in life, which is your teenage years, your brain, you're not fully developed in your brain, and you kind of need a lot of help to know what's right and what's wrong. And your brain generally matures when you're about 25 years old. And the school system doesn't seem to recognize that. They kind of treat you like an adult, but they also treat you like a child. And children are getting a lot of mixed messages from their teachers, their peers, their principals, and other staff at school. So it becomes a very delicate balance in the school system, especially when you're trying to navigate through life and you're trying to navigate the school system. So it can get very, very stressful for some kids, and I see that going on.
And especially when the parents are going through their own struggles and they cannot devote that much time to the children. And if they are working, some parents work long hours and the kids are home alone, or they're just watching TV or video games. And that isolation breeds some different kind of ideas, and they don't get the true kind of emotional support system in place, which they need at this time. So I would like to go, Archana, to the parents. If they have any specific questions, we could go there now.
Perfect timing. Great. And thank you so much, Sahaj. Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Madam, what's your name again? I missed it.
Brenu, Brenu, B-R-E-E-N-U, Brenu.
Brenu, Ms Brenu, thank you so much for giving us precious information. So now the floor is open. Anybody who wants to ask a question, can you please raise a hand? And for that, maybe you'll have to open your video also. So I will appreciate that. Yes, please. If you have any question, kindly raise your hand and I'll surely request you to present your question. Yeah, Kajal or Gopal or
Yeah,
anybody?
I can.
Sure, Kajal, go ahead. Yeah,
Yes,
Kajal.
I don't get choice where to raise a hand. So, anyways, I'll go ahead with my question. So, one thing, like I completely echo and agree with Ms. Brenu. I mean, that is exactly how I think, that it's not just one problem, but different levels, and that's where we need to address it at every level. And end of the day, it is all about bringing the balance. But I want to know from their experience, how can we do this? Like, where exactly we need to start, and how can we make this happen?
Great question. I think it starts with education, educating and putting those resources accessible so that it's on our tips. We don't have to really dig hard to get those resources. Maybe through school counselors, maybe through, churches and even flyers where there are parenting trainings. We also want to change the attitude about mental health. I think mental health is not the way I approach when I have teenagers coming to my practice, that it's not that you have an illness. I'm going to teach you coping skills. I'm going to teach you to look at it, something from a different perspective. We all inherently have those skills when we're faced with adversity. We have to stop. We have to think, okay, this is a challenge. Some people get stuck in that phase only. I'm a challenge, it's a challenge, and it turns into depression because they were trying to control the environment or the outcome. Just accepting it and then moving forward, going, okay, I can do this about it, I can do this about it. And given the limited age or experience or where you are, maybe that's the only two solutions you could come up with. So when you come to somebody trusted, I'm going to be able to add 2 more or 3 more layers to it. And then one of those situations that either you've thought about or I've proposed, there may be an aha moment. We could say, oh, I didn't think about it. That's a different perspective. So when mental health is, you're gaining a different perspective and you're owning and being comfortable with that lovely balance of, there will be one day I'll get up to smell roses, and one day I'm going to fall on those thorns and I'm going to pick myself. And I love, because when I look at it, when obstacles hit you, it's a higher being or a way for us to say, your job is done, you're moving and shifting to something different. And this, where you were, prepared you and made you ready to be at that next step. So when obstacles come, you look at it, wow, that's what journey life about, being a journey. It's not getting to the end, is all about. How do you get to the journey is nature's way of just working itself out and pushing you to where you need to be next. And if you're open to it and you're aware, you will notice that things just fall in place, and your training or your experience that you're coming from beautifully prepared you for that next journey. So trusting in ourselves, trusting in that process, and just taking charge of your life, and then trusting the people around you to say, I got stuck in that, show me a different perspective. Now I'm on my way. So I think that comfort level with mental health and reaching out and talking about it is a great way to heal and great way to take control. So we got to change that.
I'm with what Brenu said, but I will add a few things to this. As I shared with you, Archanaji, earlier, that I started my first nonprofit 28 years ago, because I knew that everybody cannot afford the mental health or psychotherapy until the family have an insurance policy, or even for the Medicare. There are psychologists like me, those who don't take Medicare and Medicare, because we can't even pay our office bill with that kind of money we get. So we have to do extra work or see private patients where we could pay the bills we need to pay. So what I would suggest to the parent, because we live in the Silicon Valley, we live in this area, that as we invest on the beautiful buildings, beautiful cars we drive, and beautiful home, we need to pool our resources to have a community centers like we have ICC, and my Hume Center is going there to provide services, but we need to have a financial resources pooled into this and into one kind of a place where we could hire other people and they could go to different neighborhood. Like in the Jewish community, we have Jewish community center in all over the Bay Area, and they have school for kids. They have parental classes for the families, and they have classes for the elders. They have communication workshops, how to talk between grandparents, parents, and kids. And they have those kind of resources available to the community. And Indian community we have done such a wonderful job raising our level of our standard of living. We have been very successful. We have been working hard, but now collectively, I have been talking for 30 years that collectively we haven't done enough for our community. And we need to, because we have some cultural sensitivities and the cultural context and the linguistic issues, which we cannot get from the mainstream psychologists or mainstream mental health system. We have to create our own kind of mental health system, which incorporates some of the long-lasting, centuries-old mental health theory or spiritual theories. We have leaders, we have gurus, we have rishis, we have munis, we have all these spiritual leader guru coming here to United States, teaching us the spiritual way, but they don't know the legal functioning of the system we live in. They don't know the school system we live in. They don't know the pressure we have when we're working on the jobs here in this area. So we need to have local people, those who know the both worlds. We need to have some resources to support them so that they could support the system at large and help even those parents, those who don't have the resources. So that's my 2 cents, that we need to pool our resources and come up with, like now we have this South Asian Behavioral Health and Training Foundation, which I started up the Hume Center. I go and give these lectures to people, but I spend my own money and my own time. And if we have the resources, then I won't think twice that, I'm going to pay my bills. Then I will be able to go anywhere in the Bay Area I want to go.
No, I truly agree with you, Dr. Kumar, that thank and appreciate your help to us in communicating all the information. Thank you, Ms Brenu and Sahej, for giving us so valuable information. Yes, I do agree that we will come up with some plans that we can always, encourage, and, there'll be something that we can do from our side. We are taking baby steps. So thank you for helping us at this stage, because we are like just starting on thinking about these terms, which are so vital, so important, but yet we have not paid attention till now. So let me move ahead and request other parents who would like to ask any question. So what I meant by raising hand is just on the screen. It's not any button, just on the screen, or you can just come up with a question. So everybody's welcome. It's an open forum, and we would love to hear from all of you of what are your, so Sri Rajgopal sends a message. In your practice, do you see the stress on Indian origin students different from other communities? In other words, is this unique to Indian origin immigrant students, or do high school children in Bay Area face similar issues? So that's a question from Sri Rajgopal.
Yeah, I think Brenu will add to that, but the stress is same no matter where you come from. The manifestation of mental health symptoms or stress is the same across the world. What we do with that manifestation is different in different culture. We deal with those stressful things in a different from our cultural lens, and whereas the mainstream community deals with their cultural lenses, because the kids, those who are born and raised here, and parents, those who are born and raised here, they have a different perception, and they see things from a different. And most of the parents here, those who are mainstream, they'll tell, oh, put the kids on the medication if he's stressed out, so that he could relax. And Indian parents mostly we say, we don't want the medication right now. Let's talk to the kid. Let's find out what's wrong with it. And it takes time.
I think, and to piggyback on that, also the family, how much the family values education. So Indian families usually we come from a country where it's survival of the fittest. So there's caste system playing. So the only way to get ahead is having that discipline, doing well, and having to be able to be the one out of the many millions to get that one job for which thousands of people have applied. So we've inherently learned to work really hard, and so we have discipline. When we come to this country, we maintain that discipline, and we instill the similar values in our children to do well, to get all A's, and if in anything below an A, then it looks like a failure. So that can be a little extreme. So when these kids come to school, they're bringing that pressure, that stress, to get all A's, and they're losing themselves into that. And I remember one colleague, we were over lunch, we were just sort of reminiscing and catching up about, our childhood times. And he said, I remember I got all A's. And this person is a chiropractor and a attorney, so really highly educated and accomplished. And said, I was so happy. I had all A's and one B, and I couldn't wait to get home and share that with my parent. And the only one thing my father said to me is, "Why do you have a B?" It's just the impact. And I remember even when he recalled that, I could see that pain. I could see that just that child being crushed, and it was that B. And I think that our culture, our parents, Indian parents, do that. We don't celebrate the failures. In fact, in our home, I tell we don't talk about grades. That's not the topic I want to talk about. I want to celebrate the strengths. And if there is a grade that you're not doing well, that tells me you need extra help. So let me find the resources to get you that, as opposed to berating you that why you didn't get that. So we don't get to the root of the problem. We get into blaming and getting upset. And then that, when the morale is down, nobody's learning or growing. So those failures, we come where we are raised to be perfect, and that's not okay. So different, like Mexican culture may be different, African American culture may be different, Hispanic culture may be different. So combination of how much value we put in education, what we're bringing to that, and how the stress, and when we are not successful because there's a learning disability that's getting in the way, which in our culture, when I went to school in India, I don't recall ever having any child that had a learning disability, or we had ramps for handicapped children. Here it's all inclusive. So it's so nice to see someone who could be blind or deaf or hard of hearing still be attending school with everyone, And so we want to celebrate those successes as well when we're not able to do or not 100% at that, and create that balance. So that all kind of plays into the cultural, your parents' belief, what they are pushing the kids to, our own. Sometimes parents are living through vicariously through their child because they didn't have the opportunities. So we've got to catch ourselves and step back and go, let's revisit this whole dynamic and maybe ask for help and have some, a professional help bridge that gap.
And also we need to see the parents' parenting style.
Yes.
How, because each parent is so different, and we cannot make generalization based on one parent style. We have different parent styles. Some are easygoing, some are very strict, and strict parents produce children, those who are very punitive in their life, and people, those who are very easygoing, and sometimes they don't recognize the needs of the child because they are so easy, or they will just get to learn. Sometimes that attitude also destroys some potential of the children, and some are in between, some keep the balance. So each parent style has a different consequence of raising their kids. So it's a uniqueness with each parents, and also with kids. Some kids learn by visually more. Some kids learn by hearing more. Some people have to touch to learn things in a long-lasting way. Some people just get the social cues they learn. Some don't get the social cues. So it varies from individual to individual. And mental health is a unique, tailored intervention to each individual, not to the generic parental style.
That's great, Dr. Kumar. So Gopal, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot the student's name. Would you mind?
Saez.
Saez? Okay. Hey, Saez, I was listening into yours. It doesn't mean that I didn't listen to others, but I think I was focusing on what you said about the grades. Yeah, the grades, getting 4.0 GPA or the straight A plus. It's not that important. I'm great. I mean, I just listening to parents, and I think that's the environment you are in. So you feel like that, and then you are kind of trying to practice. You are practicing those. How do you see your peers in the schools when you hear from your friends? And I'm sure that not every parent, right? The reason why we are all here is that I think we want to learn. Sometimes we do that. We are not, I would say, consciously putting that effort. Not at all, right? Sometimes. So when you talk to your friends and others, I'm sure that they will share something. Yes, my mom or dad just looked at the B or a C, not looked at the A, all of them. And have you had a chance to discuss with them what is that? It is that the parents, or sometimes it's the students itself as a peer pressure, or is it the school? Do you get any sense as a student? Because we can come up with whatever it is, but you know from your own buddy system, understand, what is really, what area each one has to play some role in it. And is it the home parents are playing a major role in this one, or the peer? Because I do hear from my kids and others, it's a peer pressure itself, right? My friend, they got 4.0, they got a A plus, I got A minus, or even A minus is becoming a big problem, even though it's in the A. So can you share from your perspective, what do you see it from your friends?
Yeah, so I have talked to my friends and other students, and I have seen what they've been saying. And a lot of it comes from a combination of home, school, and peer pressure too. Most of the time it comes from home. I hear students saying, oh, well, my dad would be mad at me if I get a B plus, or my mom, she'll yell at me if I don't do well on this test. So a lot of it comes from home, but also some of it does come from peer pressure. You have students that are really good at maybe English or maybe math, and they'll complain saying, oh, I got a 97% on my test, I could have done better. And the kids who maybe got an 80% or a 75%, they listen to that and they kind of say, oh, wow, maybe I need to do better, or maybe I need to try harder, even though they're studying 2-3 hours a day, and that's just, they can't get to those high scores, 97%. And the school environment too. Sometimes teachers will say, well, I went over this over and over again and you just didn't understand it. You need to do something on your own, even though the kid is asking for help. So it comes from a combination, but I feel, just talking to my friends and the peers that are around me, I feel like it's coming from at home, the parents, which is one of the biggest ones, and it comes from peer pressure, and then the kind of the least amount of stress comes from the school. Sometimes teachers don't know how to respond to a student who is having some trouble with that specific subject.
So I have one, in addition to this, some kids get into smoking pot, dealing with their pressure, and some. So do you think that the problem that more complicated when those things are involved?
Definitely, yes. When you start smoking addictive substances, you get hooked to them and you get drawn to them, and you can't control it. So if you're already struggling in a class and you kind of you get an urge to go smoke, or you get an urge to consume some of those addictive substances, you you end up missing out even more of the classroom material. And that also helps grow that divide. So then peer pressure becomes an even more, an even bigger part of your experience. And then your parents would go, hey, you know, you have everything. Why aren't you doing too well? And that also kind of grows that divide in terms of, well, you're comparing the best of the best students and you're comparing your child, and it all just plays into one big one big circle, kind of, in the sense that one influences the other. And then when you throw drugs or addictive substances into the mixture, it can just kind of throw the whole system out of balance.
And to add to that, and then we, students who, in order to numb their pain, they are, secretly drinking. I have now cases where there are 7-year-olds who are drinking. It just in elementary level. But again, it goes again to how the parent style. Parent is putting that pressure. Okay, grades are important. Instead of saying there's going to be a balance, if your grades fall, let's look at why they fell. And it just tells me maybe the teacher's new or not seasoned or hasn't learned the way to teach. And there are clearly some gaps. And let's add tutor. If I'm good at it, let me sit with you. Let's look at this and correct it, as opposed to why did you not do this or get a better grade, as opposed to owning it and saying, this is our problem. Let me talk to the teacher. Let me, share this concern. Let me get you a tutor. Let me sit with you and see how you're understanding if, so it just trickles. So then that child feels that pressure when they're unconsciously saying it. Oh, I should have done better. Where did they get that message? And it's nice to have a good goal, to have all A's, but there's inherently that pressure that they have picked up and they're just verbalizing it. And now peers around are feeling, that because we live in a perfect society and everything has to be perfect, there's no room for imperfections anymore. So then that starts to trickle. And so it just becomes a vicious cycle that everybody else around also falls, as opposed to, hey, if you're not doing well, that's okay. Let me help you. I'm good at math. Why don't during lunchtime, I sit and help you? Where are we raising kids to have that compassion where when I grow, you grow with me, or it's me individual? So we have to be very clear as parents what message and how we are raising, so that when they go out in this world, it is collective and for the greater good, because we're doing this together.
Absolutely. Thank you. This is awesome. And maybe I think there are a couple of questions on the chat. I think, Archana, you may want to, but I just put that question, but maybe you can think about it before, maybe at the end of the session, you can answer. Is there a way, since you being a psychiatrist at a school and listening into students, is there a way to sense that these kids are under pressure or looking for help? Sometimes it's bottling up. It cannot come out quickly. That's what it gets into different decisions they take, or words they are turning into drugs or whatnot. Is there a way to sense it early that it is bottling up, but before it bursts? We want to know, because you might have seen people, somebody might have approached you, or you might have even watched it and say that, oh, this is really bottling up inside. So again, just a question, maybe if you can directly answer, or maybe actually there are other people I want to give an option. There are questions on the chat as well.
Sure. But this is very important, Gopal. I think I would like to know if there's a symptom or a syndrome or any presentation that we should read. We could read. This is very important.
So in the school world, again, this goes back to we raise our children as a village. The school staff has to be vigilant, and there are ways to advocate, or there are resources on campus. So when students are general ed and not special ed, they can go to talk to their counselor.
Remember to get my form when we go to the doctor on Monday.
Okay, that's okay.
So we can go their counselors, school counselors. We also have what's called student study team meetings. So if teachers gives us, makes a referral saying, okay, I'm starting to see when we return from holidays, this kid's a whole different person. The affect is different, has this hood on, not participating, is lashing out, or getting into fights. So that's a way a referral gets generated. And so the counselor meets, and then making that assessment, either we say, okay, if the grades are falling, let's have a student study team meeting. Let's look at from every angle. And you may be surprised, maybe the student's doing great in math and science, but there's something happening in this English class, or that was the first in the morning and this kid's not the morning. Something happened where maybe becoming depressed, and morning is not now going well, and morning classes are where he's having the struggle, but then rest of the day. So as a team of professionals,
Second,
we
mute everyone. Yeah, that'll be great.
So that's one way. Then when we have exhausted our resources in the general education, because by law we have to make sure that we have all in the least restrictive setting, that we have put all our resources to make the student successful, that's when it gets escalated to a special education referral. And that's when I get the referral and we look at, there's more going on. And this is where I need to see data, over the semester, what's happened. And it could be sometimes as simple as an attendance issue because there was a death in the family, or parents are going through a divorce, and now we got the counseling and kids fine, grades are going back up. Or it was a tutor issue, we got the tutor, the necessary help, everything's okay. But then some just continues, and then we look at those learning disabilities, what's going on. And there are 13 eligibility criteria. So each special education eligibility criteria has its own element that we have to look at, when is the student meeting that to qualify. And then that generates the IEP, individual education plan. So there are ways, certainly in the schools. And then if the school system or the counselors feel that there is something else going on at home, because we are more educational based counseling, more about social skills, coping skills, anxiety, how that's impacting your education. But if there's something more happening at home, then we contact the parent and encourage that maybe outside therapy as a family, as a unit to, or medications, something else is happening. There's ADHD diagnosis or ADD. We do our educational diagnosis, so we look outside to more for medical diagnosis and help for the family.
Well, after that, we have that individual
IEP.
IEP. There is a law in the state of California, and it's a federal law too, that if this kid is going through a difficult time and they need the psychological evaluation, and they can call a private practitioner to do those EEP plans for them. Even school does it, but sometimes if it's a ADHD or some other behavioral issues or a brain pathology involved, then they could send it to the outside and the school pays for those services.
I see.
Parent doesn't have to pay, that school does.
So that happens if there's a dispute. So a school psychologist does their assessment, and we did our educational, and the parent is saying, no, I agree, there's something more here. The school looks at the psych and say, can you look into these areas? Because we have to assess in all suspected disabilities. So it's important for a parent to state what it is they are looking at, or what through student study team that data generated. So because we have millions of tests, I need to know what is it I'm honing into to help the student. And if there's a disagreement, then it gets pushed as independent evaluation. So one evaluation, parents have the right to get on free, which district pays for when there's a dispute. And then we compare, and then we consider that data. We look at our data. Sometimes we may say, oh yes, the parent didn't share this concern, and now we're covering that. Let's incorporate it and find out what's a good program for this child, or the goals to make to help the student to be successful.
And in addition to that, when kids have developmental disabilities or autistic kids or Asperger disorder, and some of these subtleties are very hard to detect initially by school psychologists at times, or unless even parents don't know that those subtleties are happening. So if kids have those kind of developmental delays, we could work with the families, or some parents know from the beginning that their child is not performing in a normal way, and they are much more in tune with the children need. But some people are not in tune. They just try to ignore it, and they just postpone it, or I'll see this, because they get busy with their jobs.
Yeah.
And things get really more and more complicated with the passage of time.
Thank you. No, really appreciate it. Thank you so
Gopal.
much.
Thank you, Ms Brenu. Thank you, Dr. Kumar. So I guess a few questions have already been answered in the process that Ms Brenu explained, but I'll still put all the questions to you in case if there's something that you would like to add. So there's a question: in public schools in Bay Area, what resource does a child have within the school system for mental health? How do they get access to this resource? This is question number one. There's another question: if parents have best interest for their child, can we reflect why parents pressure? Is it the expectation, competition, and demanding admission and university's expectation? So these two questions, but I know we are out of time, but if you can answer these two, it'll be really appreciated. But it's on you. Finally, your call.
So from the school, yes, we have the resources. Starts with the counselor. The counselor would escalate to, we have outside schools have contracted with outside agencies that come in and provide the mental health component that support the educationally based. But if it is more requires the family, then that can be, with the parents can tap into their insurances and then look to attending therapy with the family with their insurance piece involved. In terms of the pressures and, again, yes, for kids, parents are everything. They want to please their parents. They want to, and from the way parents are interacting with their child, their self-esteem is being built. And so if parent is going to always be punitive and negative and your child cannot do anything right, that's the message they have about them. I can't do anything right. And so they take that message into the world, and then they behave accordingly to what they are believing in them. And it starts very earlier on. How often do we catch ourselves when a little child is crawling and then learning to walk? They're inquisitive, they're curious. Let them do that unless they're reaching out to an electric socket or a gas burning, fire. Yes, the parents have to stop, but let them be creative. Let them, and then just embellish them. Oh, how lovely. This was amazing. You're so creative. You're just so awesome. Now let's look at this parent who's saying, no, 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 that was a bad decision. This was terrible. How could you do this or think this? Or lovely. Oh, this is great. How creative, how wonderful. I'm so proud of you. You're like apple of my eye. Take those two kids into this. Now they're out in the world. What's going to happen? So it starts with the relationship, that positive, accepting, loving environment, encouraging. And when we fall, we just poo-poo that. Okay, we fell. What's the solution? What we learned? Let's move on. We've trained that child to say, oh, problems is not a problem. We'll just get over it, find a solution, move on. As opposed to, it's all your fault. You did this. Now we're in this mess. So we are teaching them to get stuck. Now it's depression, anxiety, all that's happening. As opposed to experience life. It's about journey. It's about growing and learning lessons. And it'll be a fool. We're a fool when we repeat that again. But the first time when it happens, let's learn it. It built us. It built our character. Let's celebrate it and move on.
That's so well put. Thank you, Ms. Brenu. I mean, very amazing content as well as beautiful presentation. The way you explain to us, it brings clarity. So anybody else would have any question before we say thank you and bye-bye to our privileged guests? Any other parent would have a question?
No, I don't have a question, but I have one request. It would be great. You talked about IEP, some of those things, symptoms, whatnot. It would be good if you have any pointers. I know each school may have a different ones. If you could just send some links or some material, we can just go through, or even sometimes some videos, YouTube videos or anything which you always think that we should listen to, we should refer to. It would be great if you could set some other link to Archana so that she can share with all of the parents. There are hundreds of parents in the WhatsApp group who are really wanted to see it. And it'll be good to have those pointers so that we can go and revise ourselves and listen to it. That's one request.
Thank you, Gopal, for putting that. And we have one hand up by Preeta. Yeah, Preeta, go ahead.
I'm Ganga. Actually, Preeta is my daughter's name. Sorry about that. Forgot to change.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I have realized that my son is in senior year high school now, and I have a daughter who is in middle school. I have realized that I have made many mistakes, as probably many parents do. When my son was younger in his elementary school and in his middle school, even now I tend to make mistakes, but I have become more conscious and try to pause myself. So what if I have realized that I have made mistakes in the past in pointing out that what he did wrong and keep complaining and yelling at times, uh, um, that I know it probably has affected here and he's carrying it here. And I have tried in the past 1 year, I have tried to have open conversations and even apologize to him. I have realized I've made mistakes in the past and I'm sorry. But I'm still having a hard time him being able to open up so we can have this dialogue going and I can open up this thing. And do you have any suggestions on what I can do and what I can do to help my teen open up?
So I think first of all, it's I'm so amazed. You know, it always starts with an apology. I did wrong. Let's grow together. So that was just absolutely amazing that you did that. And you know, it's open communication. You're modeling to the child, saying, "I'm an adult. I'm a parent, but I made a mistake, and I'm acknowledging, and I'm asking for forgiveness, and let's work together." At the same time, we want to be patient because it's so many years of that same message, and now we're going to change. Sometimes change is hard, and we want to talk about specifics. So when we are saying, "I'm sorry, yes, I was, I didn't understand you," but in what context? So we want to talk about what issues were that may have caused that tension, and we want to take that specific issue and then talk about it, and then respect the space. Not everybody processes it at the same time. They heal differently, but you planted the seed. You have now said, we start with sorry, and now we're changing the dynamic of our home. We are going to, when new issues come up, we're going to reason, we're going to sit back, we're going to talk about it. And maybe it's a family time. We might say after dinner, we have dinner together. After that, once the dishes are done, or however, let's 15-20 minutes before bedtime, or let's sit down as a family and discuss things. How was your day? What's bothering? And if it gets to a point where one is escalating, or we could say, okay, maybe let's take time to process. I can tell it's elevating. Cool down. We can revisit again. So it's almost making appointments with family and saying what will be a good time. We have a pressing issue. That we have a disagreement, but we want to resolve that. Then we want to resolve it when everybody's cool, when everybody's present. We don't want to resolve it or start a topic when your son may have a test the next day. So finding that time. So that's why making an appointment. There's something really important. I want to talk. When would be a good time for the family to be there? Saturdays or Friday evenings, or can be a family. And so starting that's great that you have the ball, in motion here, and also respecting that healing takes time. People heal differently, so there's going to be a pushback, but when he's ready, he will, because it's consistent. You have changed for the, your way of parenting, or so when that consistency sets in with a little bit of time, it will start to make a difference. But just being patient and knowing that, being patient about their time and process also.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Preeta. Thank you, Brenu. And thanks to all of you joined, Kajal, Avni, Gopal, GS, Deepika, Sri Gopal, Sushmita, Sonia, Ruby, all. I really thank from my heart for joining this wonderful session. I'll post the recording so that if anybody's missed, can take information and from this valuable content. And we'll see you next Saturday at 3 p.m. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. Thank you, Brenu. Thank you, Sahaj. You made difference to a lot of lives today. And, thank you. And how we say, duaein, all sort of wishes from all of us. May God, bless and keep you and your family. Thank you so much. And until
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Stay healthy and be blessed. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.